So, these best decks aren't going to be in any particular order because it is day 1, but I just think that after playing about 8 or 9 different decks and playing against a vast variety of other decks, I think it's safe to say what decks are the most powerful right now, and right off the bat, I think Big Druid is absolutely phenomenal. Consistent ramp, tons of survivability, an insane board presence with Carnival Clown. Like, playing this after you've corrupted it on turn 10, because usually after you ramp, you'll play this turn like 8 or 9, then you'll play this turn 9 or 10. It's almost impossible to deal with, and even if they do, you have another one, and then even if they do, you have HsReplay, not to mention the fact you have other ways of developing a board with the ward, with some free 4/4 owls with rush that usually get pumped, free strongmen, and a lot of draw. And then you have Yogg and HsReplay, which basically say, they deal with my board, fine, I have insane late game too. This deck has got everything you could possibly need in a deck. Ramp, draw, survivability, huge board swings, you name it. Honestly, I think that this is one of the best decks, and with the beginning of the expansion being so versatile, just having really big minions with good stats and wide boards is usually a good way to go, which is why I think Big Clown Druid is a top 5 deck right now. I'm very excited to have Totem Shaman be in the position it's in. I've really wanted Totem Shaman to be good for a long time. If you go back even like 2 expansions, I was trying to get Totem Shaman to work. It became decent in Skullman's Academy, and I think it is significantly better, if not like top tier right now. It's got good early game, it's got a little bit of draw, it's got and it's got some pretty good mid game. The late game is kind of lacking, with Totem Goliath closing out with Bloodlust or Totemic Surge being your only real options there, but most of the time you're able to like accelerate your board so fast, it doesn't even matter. It really doesn't matter a lot of the time. And this is one of the decks that can take advantage of the slower ramp Druid, because since they're not running since Ramp Druid isn't running Guardian Animals into Cleave minions anymore, they actually don't have ways of generating a ton of board presence until, like, you know, around the same time period, but it's a little bit weaker in my opinion, because they put more of their eggs into a later game basket, and I feel like that's the case with every single deck. Almost every single deck is like, we're going to go for these late game combos, and this deck just dismantles any deck that doesn't have presence for the first, like, 4 or 5 turns. Like, if you can't do with Manatite Totem or Grand Izor right off the bat, and you pump it up, you're going to get ahead on cards, you're going to get ahead on stats, not to mention the fact that, again, your mid game is actually pretty strong with Circus Amalgam and Totem Goliath, and then copying them with Splitting Axe. Like, overall, I think this deck is quite strong. I would highly recommend it. Good early game. Sorry, I hit my desk there. Good early game, good mid game, and I would highly recommend it. Okay, so next on the list is Control Warrior, and honestly, Control Warrior is very good. Doesn't run N'Zoth, doesn't run Yogg, it doesn't run Cthulhu, but it's just your standard Control Warrior with a couple of the new cards, like Claw Machine, giving you rush potential as well as card draw, really strong. You have more card draw with cards like Ringmaster as well. You have both Highlander cards, Zephyrus and Alexstrasza, because your draw in this deck is pretty solid. Not to mention the fact that your late game's insane. You have Rattlegore, Alexstrasza, Deathwing, Zephyrus. Sure, you don't have the old gods, but honestly, if you wanted to, you could probably fit at least N'Zoth in, because you have several different types of minions. You have at least a couple of mechs, dragons, and pirates. It's definitely still a work in progress deck, so if you are trying to perfect this, control decks usually take a little bit longer to refine than other decks, so this is probably not going to be the final version, but something along these lines will be a top tier deck. It's got the removal to deal with aggro decks and the armor and stuff, as well as having the late game to go toe-to-toe with some of the later game decks as well. So honestly, I think this deck has a lot of potential. I would recommend it if you haven't tried it already, although it is a little bit expensive, and I could go over budget list, by the way, eventually after I try all of the decks a little bit. So hopefully you guys enjoy this deck, and let's jump on to the next one. Secret Mage. Wow, this deck has surprised me quite a bit. I'm gonna be honest, I thought that this deck was gonna be good going in, but I didn't think it was going to be this good. Not only do you have Yogg-Saron in this deck, which is pretty normal, I threw in Cthulhu because you draw very fast. You have cards like Ancient Mysteries. Apexis Smuggler can discover you spells that draw. You have, what's it called? Where is it? You have the new secret, Rigged Fair Game, which honestly triggers more often than you think, especially with the slower meta right now. So very often you'll draw 3 cards, sometimes more, with these secrets. Not to mention the fact that off of Ring Toss and a couple of other cards, you could discover even more Rigged Fair Games. Then you have Sage to finish out drawing the rest of your deck. Bada bing, bada boom. You get to play Cthulhu fairly consistently. I was pleasantly surprised with putting Cthulhu in the deck. It does slow it down a little bit, but it gives Secret Mage a little bit more of a late game win condition because they are more of an early game focused deck. And then obviously you have Yogg-Saron because you have 1, 2 cards off of this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 12, 13 spells, plus Cthulhu, plus whatever you discover off of the Apexis Smuggler, and plus a couple of other ways of generating spells as well. So honestly, this deck is very consistent with its late game, very consistent with its early game. If you can get a secret to stay on the board and then play the Occult Conjure turn 4, the amount of tempo you gain is enough to basically like at least solidify you early game, which means you probably won't die. And yeah, this deck's insane. And then also you have Cloud Prince, which is basically like a fireball with a 4/4 body as well, which is quite strong in my opinion, and it's a great way to finish off your opponents. This deck has a lot of things going for it, honestly. And with 2 Flame Wards and a Firebrand, early aggro decks are not as much of a problem as they are with other mage decks. Last but not least, we have Tickatus Warlock. Honestly, I think that this deck was a blast to play. Tickatus is my favorite card in the expansion, which might be part of the reason why I'm putting it on here. But honestly, the deck's good. Even though I went 4 and 4, 2 of the losses were with a version I got off of Hearthstone I decided to run with. And then after I changed it up a little bit and optimized it, it went like 4 and 2, which is not bad by any means. You have Headmaster Kel'Thuzad, which means that the Cascading Disaster will get you 2 to 3 extra minions. This is an insane 9-mana combo, by the way. Like, ridiculous. You got some decent healing with the Medic, Nether Breath with the Morgue Artificer, and some Soul Fragments. You have good late game with Yasharge, getting you Tickatus back, as well as some good removal to basically save your board. You have Sociologist, which is a good late-ish game card considering you have a couple of Soul Fragments. And then you also have Demon Studies, which can generate you some big demons later on if you need to. Good draw, Dragon Synergy with Crazy Nethering. This deck has basically got so many things going for it. It's crazy how you can fit everything into just one crazy deck. And Tickatus disrupts late game combos of the opponent's decks, which is usually pretty beneficial for you. So honestly, I think this deck is quite solid. I think it's a little bit more difficult to play than some of the other decks I mentioned, but I would recommend trying it out if you haven't already. Tickatus is such a fun card, and if you don't have some of the cards, Alexstrasza isn't actually that needed. She's just a dragon that helps Crazy Netherwing, but not 100% needed. Headmaster Kel'Thuzad is really good for a board swing, but is more of a isn't a needed card, not like a staple, so you can take it out if you want. But Yasharge, Tickatus, and Sociologist are relatively important for the deck. So honestly, hope you guys enjoyed this this tier list. Obviously, I came out with one yesterday with a pre-tier list, but this is after I've actually played a lot of games. I've played like 50 games in this set already, and these are the decks that have surprised me or just obviously seem the strongest to me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Good luck grinding. And just a question for those of you who made it this far: how are you enjoying the expansion so far? Personally, I'm loving it, but I want to hear your opinion.